began with a radar alert over the Baltic, an anomaly so precise that NATO's Combined Air Operations Center hesitated for only seconds before confirming it 3 Russian MiG-31 Foxhounds had crossed into Estonian airspace. The question wasn't why Moscow's provocations along NATO's frontier had become routine, but how far the alliance was willing to go this time. With President Donald Trump reaffirming America's commitment to NATO air policing earlier that month, the incident took on global significance. According to data from NATO radar networks and confirmed by sources quoted by Reuters and Defense News, the MiGs flew high, nearly 20 kilometers up, testing reaction time and the range of Western sensors. But instead of scrambling jets in haste, NATO's CAOC in UEDM, Germany executed a deliberate pause. It was a calculated move, a decision to let technology, not emotion, take the lead. They wanted to see everything track everything and use the Foxhounds as live data targets, one senior European defense analyst told BBC World Service. Within minutes, Italian F-35A Lightnings II were vectored silently from a Mari air base. Their mission to remain unseen to let the Russian interceptors believe they were unchallenged, while the alliance's most advanced digital eyes locked onto every emission the Foxhounds produced. These F-35s operated in MCON emission control mode, meaning their own radars remained passive. Instead, they absorbed, processed, and transmitted data through a network of Link 16 and MADL connections to NATO's AWACS overhead. The trap was invisible yet absolute. Observers in Tallinn described it as a cat-and-mouse encounter in slow motion, but military analysts now view it as a testbed for hybrid deterrence. The decision not to immediately intercept mirrored the evolving NATO doctrine. Rather than meeting speed with speed, meet it with information dominance. Every radar pulse from the MiG-31 Zaslan M system became a breadcrumb for the F-35 sensor fusion algorithm, allowing real-time classification and target modeling. The timing was crucial. Since early 2025, Western militaries have been fine-tuning AI-driven threat libraries, integrating Ukrainian battlefield telemetry and data from Russian aircraft over Syria. As a result, these Estonian skies became more than a border zone. They were a digital laboratory. By letting the MiGs overstep NATO effectively, invited them into a data trap designed to refine counter-Foxhound tactics. Experts at Jane's Defense Weekly have noted that Russia's air patrols near NATO's border have become increasingly aggressive as Moscow seeks to assert control over the Kaliningrad corridor. But this time it was NATO, not Russia, that controlled the tempo. The F-35's stealth profile and its ability to merge radar infrared and electronic intelligence into a single tactical picture meant the alliance could see without being seen, a principle first validated in US-China encounters over the South China Sea earlier this year. Why is this shift so vital? Because modern air warfare is no longer defined by who fires first, but by who knows first. As one retired US Air Force colonel told DDW, information is now the new altitude. Whoever owns the data layer wins the sky. The incident ended without a shot, yet it redefined deterrence in Europe's most contested air corridor. NATO's restraint masked a deeper message. The alliance no longer reacts, it anticipates. But what exactly did those F-35s uncover during that 12-minute intrusion? And how did a single air policing mission turn into one of the most valuable intelligence harvests of the year? What those F-35s saw in those crucial 12 minutes would later reshape NATO's electronic warfare doctrine. As the MiG-31 Foxhounds continued deeper into Estonian skies, their radar signatures lit up like beacons against the backdrop of NATO's silent sensors. The alliance had transformed the incursion into an unprecedented intelligence opportunity. Operating in MCON, the Italian F-35A Lightning stayed invisible. Their low probability of intercept LPI radar pulses, too faint to be detected by Russian systems, built a precise digital ghost image of the Foxhounds. Each flicker of the MiG's massive Zaslan M radar array was absorbed, triangulated, and fed through the Distributed Aperture System DAS and Electro-Optical Targeting System EOTS. These systems didn't just capture position, they recorded heat bloom patterns, fuel efficiency, and even how the Russian pilots adjusted altitude to mask radar returns. According to Defense News analysts, this operation marked one of NATO's first live applications of full-spectrum fusion, a capability once theoretical. The F-35's brain doesn't just see radar or infrared, it thinks across them, said a US Air Force cyber warfare officer quoted by Reuters. By linking AWACS satellites and Gripen-E fighters, we effectively turned the Baltic sky into one coherent sensor. This invisible web, known internally as a sensor-to-shooter cloud, was orchestrated through the Alliance's Link 16 and MADL multifunction advanced data link systems. The F-35s transmitted collected data to AWACS command aircraft orbiting safely over Poland, which then relayed the composite picture to UADEM's command room, where artificial intelligence parsed the information in real time. The result, NATO had weapon-quality tracks on all 3 Russian interceptors down to their wing vibrations and ECM pod frequencies. Experts later compared it to catching a shark with sonar pings. While the shark thought it was the hunter, NATO's calm restraint concealed an electronic counter ambush. By not confronting the MiGs directly, the Alliance allowed the digital network to operate uninterrupted, free from the electronic clutter of active engagement. This fusion also highlighted how far Western stealth aircraft had evolved since 2022. Earlier in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, F-16s and MiG-29s fought under the radar fog of war, where range and altitude determined victory. By 2025, battles are increasingly decided in milliseconds of signal processing. As BBC defense correspondent Jonathan Beale recently noted, the F-35 has turned electronic warfare from a jamming contest into a software duel. While the Foxhounds boasted raw speed Mach 2.8 at altitude, their avionics remained tethered to legacy systems designed in the Soviet era. Their radars, though powerful, lacked digital adaptability. Each emission effectively betrayed their position to the Alliance's machine learning database. From there, NATO could model trajectories, lock potential engagement zones, and even project missile solutions without ever switching to combat mode. Trump's national security team briefed shortly after reportedly praised the operation as a masterclass in deterrence through dominance. The White House emphasized that the United States and its allies maintain air superiority not just through presence but through precision. However, this quiet success carried an undercurrent of danger. Russian commanders, aware that their top interceptors had been digitally mapped, began recalibrating border patrol patterns days later. Kremlin media dismissed NATO's response as cowardly, yet within military circles alarm grew over how easily the Foxhounds had been tracked. For NATO, the intelligence was priceless. Every radar emission became an encryption key, a step closer to neutralizing future threats before they arise. Still, one question lingers: how did NATO plan to escalate if Moscow repeated this maneuver, and could technology alone keep deterrence intact when speed and politics collide? As the MiG-31 formation turned east, NATO's silent trap evolved into a live tactical exercise. 2 Swedish Gripen-E fighters scrambled from Gotland under NATO command, joined the digital network linking the F-35s and AWACS. Their mission was not interception, it was interference. Within seconds, the Gripen switched from passive monitoring to active jamming, initiating one of the most sophisticated electronic warfare displays in European airspace since the Cold War. The Gripen-E's Arexis electronic warfare suite, renowned for its cognitive jamming abilities, began scanning and countering the Foxhound's radar sweeps in real time. Using adaptive algorithms, it identified the Zaslan M's operating bands and sent back tailored interference waves that made the Russian radars see ghosts on their scopes. According to Jane's Defense Weekly, this jamming wasn't just defensive, it was surgical, creating radar illusions of phantom aircraft at various altitudes while hiding the real F-35s completely. The Foxhounds pilots trained for high-speed intercepts found their instruments flickering unpredictably. One Russian jet briefly dropped altitude to verify visual contact, but NATO's AWACS saw it all. The moment it broke formation, the F-35s tightened their lock from 50 kilometers away. The entire engagement remained invisible to Moscow's ground controllers. For NATO analysts, this was the defining moment, the fusion of stealth speed and signal dominance. The Gripens and F-35s shared a common data ecosystem, one where jamming data and infrared tracking meshed instantly. The result was a perfect digital encirclement. The Russian pilots were boxed in without a single missile being fired. Defense News later called it the first operational demonstration of cognitive electronic warfare on a live Russian system. The technology behind it had matured from battlefield experience in Ukraine, where both sides had spent years waging an unseen war across the electromagnetic spectrum. In those conflicts, drones and HIMARS strikes relied heavily on precision jamming. Now, NATO had elevated that concept to jet combat. Even more remarkable was the restraint. Despite missile solutions appearing on every pilot's HUD, the order from CAOC remained no engagement. Instead, the Gripens pulsed brief bursts of the Iris-T and Meteor radar locks, enough for the Foxhounds' threat receivers to sound alarms, but not enough to trigger a launch. It was psychological warfare in the sky. "By showing what we could do, we achieved more than by doing it," said a senior NATO commander quoted by Reuters. "The point wasn't destruction, it was domination." The tactic echoed lessons from the Pacific, where US stealth jets had used similar lock-and-release strategies against Chinese aircraft over the South China Sea. The message: we control the engagement timeline. Russian analysts speaking on state television days later claimed their pilots retreated voluntarily, but Western defense observers saw something else entirely: a silent coercion. The MiG-31's data links were scrambled, their communications jammed, and their radar feeds deceived. For 12 tense minutes, they flew blind inside NATO's invisible cage. This operation underscored a broader strategic trend. Modern air combat no longer revolves around dogfights, but around information paralysis. NATO didn't need to destroy, it needed to demonstrate total situational control. The implications reach far beyond Estonia. As tensions rise in the Middle East and Taiwan Strait, similar digital ambush doctrines are now being tested by Western allies. Could these same tactics refined in Europe be applied against hypersonic bombers or swarm drones elsewhere? The Baltic skies may have seen no explosions that day, but the message echoed worldwide: in the next war, control of the spectrum will decide control of the sky. The confrontation entered its decisive phase, 12 minutes that would later be studied in military academies as a model of coercive control without combat. As the MiG-31 Foxhounds realized they were being electronically boxed and the Russian pilots faced a chilling reality, every defensive maneuver triggered new sensor locks from unseen adversaries. NATO's Airborne Command Center issued a final transmission across the Baltic Defense Network, a coded ultimatum relayed in open frequency for all sides to hear: you are being tracked by multiple interceptors. Reverse course immediately. At that moment, the Baltic Sea fell silent. No missile launches, no radar spikes, just pure control of the electromagnetic spectrum. The Gripens maintained steady interference while the F-35s circled in absolute stealth, recording every watt of Russian electronic output. Intelligence officers later described it to BBC News as the most complete electronic fingerprint ever captured of a MiG-31 formation in combat readiness. This was more than deterrence. It was a demonstration of dominance through data. Within those 12 minutes, NATO had transformed an intrusion into a technical harvest. Every radar waveform, every frequency hop, every command sent between the MiGs and Russian ground control was captured and archived. According to defense news analysts from the US Air Force and the European Defense Agency, would spend the following weeks dissecting the encounter, feeding its data into AI simulators to develop countermeasures for future Russian interceptors. By the 10th minute, one Foxhound attempted to accelerate toward Mach 2 to break free of jamming. It didn't matter. The F-35's passive infrared system tracked its thermal bloom instantly. Meanwhile, the Gripens executed shadow pursuit maneuvers matching speed while staying invisible on Russian scopes. In practical terms, NATO's air superiority wasn't about weapons anymore. It was about rendering the enemy's technology irrelevant. A senior official from the Trump administration's National Security Council later told Reuters, "What you saw over Estonia was a new phase of deterrence. We no longer have to shoot to win, we just have to make sure they know they're outclassed." This marked a pivotal shift in transatlantic defense strategy. By choosing restraint under control, NATO avoided escalation while still reinforcing the credibility of Article 5. It demonstrated that deterrence can now exist without direct confrontation, a key message for both Moscow and Beijing. Even Russia's internal analysis, as leaked in a Guardian report, admitted that the MiG-31's older radar and ECM systems suffered catastrophic degradation under Western jamming conditions. Kremlin officials reportedly ordered immediate reviews of the Zaslon M radar's software architecture, a tacit acknowledgement that the West had breached its technological edge. For the alliance, however, the operation was only the beginning. The stealth network's success validated investments into Project Sky Sentinel, NATO's 2025 initiative to integrate F-35 Eurofighter and Gripen systems into a single cross-domain kill web. Military experts from DW commented that this encounter provided live proof that Europe's skies could be defended without relying exclusively on US firepower, though Washington's digital backbone still powered the architecture. As the MiGs finally turned back toward Kaliningrad, escorted by a pair of Russian Su-35s, sent too late to intervene, NATO jets disengaged quietly. No pursuit, no radio taunts. Only the data told the story, terabytes of tactical insight gathered without a single missile launch. When news broke hours later, Western headlines framed it as a near miss. But defense insiders understood it was something else entirely, a live demonstration of 21st century deterrence fought not with bullets but with bandwidth. Still, one question hung in every analyst's mind. If next time Russia crosses that invisible line again, will NATO's silence still suffice? Or will the next move be kinetic? Speed once made the MiG-31 an icon of Soviet engineering, a monster of titanium and power capable of outrunning any NATO fighter. But in this new age of warfare, that same speed became its downfall. Physics, not politics, had turned against it. As the Foxhounds retreated across the Gulf of Finland, NATO analysts reconstructed every second of the event. They saw that raw velocity Mach 2.8 in theory was useless against the Meteor and AIM-120D missiles now fielded by the West. The Meteor's ramjet engine sustains thrust for over 100 kilometers, creating what military scientists call a no-escape zone, an invisible bubble in which even the fastest aircraft cannot flee. The Foxhound, with its limited turn radius and immense heat bloom, would have been destroyed long before reaching home airspace. Defense expert Marcus Wilkins of the Royal United Services Institute told BBC News, "The MiG-31 is a product of the 1980s. It was built for speed and altitude, not agility or digital resilience. Against an F-35 network, it's like a racehorse in a chess match." The Foxhound's Zaslon M radar, once the pride of Soviet avionics, operates on fixed frequencies. That rigidity makes it predictable, a fatal flaw in 2025's dynamic battlefield. In contrast, the F-35's radar can alter its waveform billions of times per second, hiding in the noise of the atmosphere. Every time the MiG-31 emitted a pulse, it essentially broadcast its coordinates to the entire NATO cloud. Russian engineers had attempted software upgrades in recent years, but according to defense, new sanctions have crippled access to advanced microprocessors. The resulting hybrid systems remain fast but blind, capable of detection but not interpretation. Meanwhile, Western munitions are evolving faster than any airframe. The AIM-120D now features dual-band two-way data links, allowing real-time mid-course updates directly from F-35s or AWACS. In essence, missiles now think together. The F-35 doesn't just fire, it collaborates, assigning multiple guidance sources to ensure the target's destruction even under jamming. Against that system, the MiG-31's traditional flare and chaff countermeasures are obsolete. The encounter over Estonia proved this imbalance vividly. The MiG's thermal exhaust signature visible to NATO satellites stood out like a beacon. In any real engagement, Meteor's seeker would have locked within seconds, and the MiG-31's massive R-37M missile, designed for bomber kills, would have never aligned fast enough to respond. "It's not about dogfighting anymore," said a senior Pentagon advisor to Reuters. "It's about dominance before the merge. The F-35's computing power alone outweighs decades of Soviet design philosophy." This shift echoes across other theaters. Over the South China Sea, US F-35s have begun testing similar distributed tracking against Chinese J-16s. In the Middle East, Israeli F-35Is use linked radar fusion to monitor Iranian drone corridors. Every engagement proves the same rule data defeats speed. For NATO, the Estonian event validated years of investment in networked deterrence. By proving that modern intercepts could be decided by information, not explosions, the alliance demonstrated that the future battlefield belongs to systems that learn faster than they fire. Still, Russia's reaction remains unpredictable. Military blogs close to the Kremlin are calling for a new generation of interceptors rumored as the MiG-41, promising Mach 4 capability and AI-based radar. But Western analysts are skeptical. "Speed won't fix vulnerability," warned The Guardian's defense columnist Anna Walsh. "If you can be tracked, you can be beaten. The next war won't be won by the fastest jet, but by the smartest network." Which raises a haunting question: if NATO already commands the spectrum, how will future adversaries adapt when every signal they emit becomes their own undoing? When the MiG-31s finally disappeared from radar and silence reclaimed the Baltic skies, NATO's sensors didn't rest. They celebrated a triumph of restraint, precision, and message control. Within hours, commanders across Europe understood what had truly happened, not an interception, but a strategic rehearsal for digital deterrence. The US European Command confirmed through Reuters that the event had been logged as a zero-shot interception. Yet within that phrase lay a revolution in doctrine. The alliance had achieved total dominance without aggression, without casualties, and without ambiguity. It was as much a political signal as a military operation, noted BBC defense correspondent Mark Urban. NATO proved it could neutralize intrusions with invisible force while keeping escalation in check. President Donald Trump, briefed that evening in Washington, reportedly praised the mission as the perfect American-led deterrent, calm, fast, and absolute. In his televised statement, he emphasized that NATO remains the shield of freedom and the sword of stability, reiterating that the US would continue investing in fifth-generation warfare and multi-domain integration. The words resonated across Allied capitals Berlin, Warsaw, Stockholm, where defense ministries had long debated whether NATO's readiness could truly match Russia's unpredictability. The encounter silenced those doubts. European analysts at Deutsche Welle wrote that the operation showcased the alliance's shift from reaction to prediction. Instead of intercepting intrusions as random provocations, NATO now turns them into data-driven rehearsals, mapping every adversary's behavior to anticipate the next step. But the political implications extend far beyond Europe. In the Middle East, Israeli defense planners reportedly reviewed the Estonian data to refine anti-Iranian air defense grids. In the Indo-Pacific, US and Japanese air forces drew lessons for intercepting China's J-20 stealth fighters. This single episode lasting under 15 minutes became a template for modern deterrence, the fusion of stealth AI and restraint under unified commands. For Moscow, the consequences were stark, according to The Guardian. Russia's Ministry of Defense convened an emergency meeting within 24 hours to evaluate the vulnerability of its Foxhound fleet. Analysts admitted privately that NATO's electronic dominance had compromised the aircraft's radar encryption sequence. Within days, satellite imagery showed rapid redeployment of air units back toward central Russia, a silent retreat that spoke volumes. NATO's internal report leaked weeks later summarized the event with a single phrase: control through clarity. Every Allied aircraft radar and AWACS platform acted as one brain, an achievement impossible even 5 years ago. This is the true meaning of 2025 warfare battles fought in milliseconds, with information moving faster than fear. The strategic effect rippled through every corridor of power. In Brussels, policymakers highlighted the event as proof that European defense autonomy could complement, not compete with American leadership. In Washington, the Pentagon approved accelerated funding for the Next Generation Air Dominance (NGAD) program, aiming to extend the F-35's networking legacy into sixth-generation platforms. Yet amid the triumph, one sobering truth lingered: technology alone cannot ensure peace. It can only delay confrontation. As one NATO official anonymously told Al Jazeera, dominance is temporary. The next encounter might not end without missiles. The Baltics incident thus stands as both a warning and a promise, a vision of warfare where control replaces chaos, but where the balance of power remains fragile. If Russia, Iran, or China choose to test the West again, they'll face not a single nation but a seamless web of intelligence and precision guided by invisible hands. But the question remains, how long can this equilibrium hold before one miscalculation turns silence into fire? The 2025 Estonian airspace confrontation between NATO's F-35A Lightnings and Russia's MiG-31 Foxhounds redefined modern air warfare. Without firing a shot, NATO demonstrated that control of data and electromagnetic dominance outweighs sheer speed or firepower. Through synchronized F-35 Gripen-E and AWACS networks, the alliance exposed the Foxhounds' outdated radar systems and captured unprecedented intelligence on Russian avionics. The operation embodied deterrence through information, turning a potential crisis into a real-time technological advantage. This success marked a turning point in transatlantic defense strategy and reinforced President Trump's doctrine of assertive tech-driven deterrence. It also sent clear messages to adversaries: future confrontations will be decided by digital superiority, not brute force. The implications stretch globally, influencing air defense doctrines from the Mediterranean to the Pacific. Still, the encounter leaves a lingering uncertainty. If NATO can dominate without firing, what happens when adversaries adapt? In an age where every signal reveals intent, the next battle may not be fought for territory, but for the last unjammed frequency.